Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Leslie Wagner. I am the San Diego Inventors Forum president. I was going to start out tonight with a good Leprechaun joke, but I really couldn't find anything. Happens to know one. You want to share? Feel free. They were either really, really bad, or I just couldn't say them in this format. So I'm going to save you all from that. But I do appreciate you coming out tonight, and at least we had some decent weather today as compared to what we have had. Tonight's topic is going to be about getting started. How do you get started as a business? And believe it or not, the fact that you have an idea for a product, you really have an idea for a business. And so we're kind of going to take you back a couple of steps, just run through some basic business planning concepts that you need to be aware of and familiar with as you begin the process. We will hopefully next month or the next month or two have a follow-up speaker who will go into more in-depth information about the different types of entities that you may be interested in establishing for your business. Okay? So one thing, please forgive me, my voice may go in and out. I've had some severe bronchitis for a while, and just 2 days ago I had no voice at all, so bear with me. And because of that, I did kind of load these slides a little bit more than I normally do, so that if this goes, we can keep going. The show will go on. We may just have to make it more interactive or read along, or maybe we'll invite someone else up to take over. We'll see how it goes. So with that, let's just get rolling. And then, so the way this works, for those of you who have not been here, we'll do the presentation. There'll be then a brainstorming session. If you don't have the worksheet for tonight, again, please come up here and pick up tonight's worksheet and a pencil. There should be, there's a few worksheets left that are from last month's presentation. So if you weren't here and you want to just take that with you, feel free. Last month's presentation was about manufacturing. Michelle Nash-Hoff, who's right here, she was our speaker last month. So if you have any questions about manufacturing, you can ask to speak to Michelle at the break. Okay? So let's get going. So tonight we're going to talk about, again, writing a business plan. And it's important for you to have a business plan because it's the way for you to organize your thoughts around your business. And when I say your business, it means everything from who you're going to do business with in terms of your customers, how you plan to raise capital, how you plan to get investors, dealing with your suppliers and your distributors, your entire supply chain, who you're going to work with in terms of your management team or your employee. You know, of course, a lot of you are probably starting out just yourself or maybe help from a family member, so you're not really thinking that you're a business. But I want you to kind of get in the mindset that while that may be the case right now, you really need to go ahead and start thinking of yourself as a business, even though you might not feel you're there quite yet. So the objective in a business plan is to be as concise about who you are and where you plan to go, but it becomes a communication tool because along the steps, you're going to use bits and pieces from that plan to basically sell yourself, sell your business, and sell your product or your brand to various people along the way. And if you have it all kind of concise and a really neat collective place, it becomes easier to then slice and dice that as you need it, and then eventually to present it all as a full and complete package. So we're going to delve into that just a little bit more. So, you know, when you think about a business plan, kind of think of it like a resume for yourself, but as a representation of your, where your business as a whole. So when we say include an executive summary is kind of like that elevator pitch or that quick overview, that summary of who, what, when, where, why. Just that attention-grabbing kind of headline that you need to be able to sell somebody on, to even be able to spend the next 5 minutes or 5 hours even talking to you. Make sure that you are describing the products or services that you plan to offer. And when I say that, one of the things that you should think about whenever you're producing a product is to think about the whole ecosystem around that product. Are there any attachment products or any sub-products that can come from, that basically can be generated from your original product idea? So even if you haven't fully fleshed those out, kind of have those in mind so that as you're going through the process and talking through it, you can kind of show that, hey, I have this one idea, and once I get this to market or once I get this to a certain stage, here are all the other things that can come of that. So it kind of gives a more holistic perspective of what your product is and what it can become. Your business history, at this point, it's going to be small because you're just starting out. There's not a lot there. But, this is where you can talk about, who you are, where you got the idea, who you may be working with on your team or your subset of your teams to show their areas of expertise and how they bring benefit to your organization and to the plan. Some other ones I've identified here in bold, which are the ones that we're going to specifically talk about tonight, is identify key intellectual property. We'll get into that a little bit later. Profiling the target customer. So at some point later on, we'll have a topic solely on, target marketing, social media marketing, all of those various aspects of how do you reach your target consumer. Identifying the supply chain. We talked a little bit about some of that last month. We'll touch on that a little bit more here tonight. And of course, even though you may think your idea is new, brand new, revolutionary, never been done before, you still have competition out there somewhere. So identifying who your competition is in that market and any market trends that you may think may be relevant to your particular product. With this exploding internet and social media, there's all kinds of new things coming out. There's all sorts of ways to review and research trend analysis information. So kind of getting really into that and understanding, where's the market going, because things are changing and happening very fast, and you certainly don't want to enter a market that's at the tail end and basically in its diminishing phase. So really expressing that where the market is going or where it has the potential to go, and that looks like an upward trajectory, not a flat or downward, that's obviously going to be a benefit to you. Again, to advertising and marketing strategies to target your target customer and all of the ways that you can do that. Your assets and liabilities. Your intellectual property is definitely one of your assets. And your liabilities are obviously your expenses, what it's, basically what it's taken you to get this product to market, whether or not that includes any, debts or loans or things like that you've taken out against the company. But you make sure you want to identify what those are. Again, going into sales forecasts and growth, profits, marketing plans, budgets, and then customer and vendor lists. So again, just a kind of a broad idea of, basically this is your table of contents, the start of your table of contents. It's definitely not all-inclusive of what might need to go into your business plan, but this is a good starter plan. And it's something that you're going to always build on. It's going to change. Things change with you, with your product, with your company. And so it's just something to start building on and adapt it as you need to as you continue down the process. So one of the things you need to think about fairly early on, and this is where we're going to have someone come in and talk to you more in depth about, is what type of entity are you going to form? Each entity has different considerations that you have to keep in mind. Costs of setup, costs of reporting, taxation is a big one. The organizational structure based on, where you plan to grow. Eventually you'll get into areas where you might need board members and things like that. How many employees you plan to carry, whether they're actually going to be employees or subcontractors. Those are those issues to think about. Definitely liability considerations. As you start, again, right now you're thinking of yourselves as I have an idea, I, personalizing it. But the reality is you need to kind of step away from that and think of it as a business, because you need to be able to shield yourself to some degree from any liabilities that may come from having a product out there in the market. Regulatory considerations may be something that you need to keep in mind depending on what the product is, where it's going to be sold, how it's going to be used. There's all types of different regulatory considerations, including environmental. So being able to identify what those are will also help you determine what type of entity you may be best suited for. And then intellectual property ownership. That's the key factor. That's going to be basically the nuts, the heart and soul of your company that leads to the development of your product. And so identifying what intellectual property you have and then how that's going to be owned as part of the, by the company is also an important consideration. Because most likely, if any of you, how many of you have a patent or have filed a patent? And how many of you did it as a business? How many of you?
Patents filed under the inventor, so.
But in terms of ownership, you have inventors and you have owners. So you all have registered, filed as inventors, as individuals, and then at some point, the intellectual property. Well, you as the inventor is the inventor, but then ownership is where you look at in terms of the company itself and as an asset to the company as well. Another consideration is joint development. So if you are considering working with another party to jointly develop your product or engage in any sort of cross licensing of intellectual property that goes into the product development, that may be another consideration for what type of business you decide to enter into. And that could also be done under a joint development agreement. Some of the same original considerations to keep in mind, but then you're somewhat spreading the risk between the two companies and identifying basically who's responsible for what aspects and how you work together, and then obviously how you walk away at the end should that become necessary. And then when it comes to leveraging that and developing, commercializing, it also sets the foundation, kind of like a prenup does if you're entering into a marriage. And of course you have the selecting a business name. How many of you got so far as to selecting a name for your business at this particular point? Just a few of you, relatively few. And anyone want to share how you came up with that business name? Don't be shy.
Yeah, so my name is Tony, and my company name is .me. So where we address all the risks associated with wandering or eloping behaviors for children with autism. So we're developing some tracking devices and an app for community building and disaster recovery. So basically we wanted to make the name as a verb. So basically what you will see on the map is a dot, and when you say the name .me, it's like it takes action or something that leads to action. So for us it was a creative way to name it.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to share how they came up with their company name? Yes.
It's a company name, but it's not an invention. I ended up patenting some water filtration system through this landscape company, but I went to, I think it was Staples, and they had a certain number of letters allowable. And I was in a crunch, and Flowing Garden Designs fit exactly in there. And so that was it.
Hey, there's no right or wrong way, I'll tell you that. There are a lot of creative ways to do it, of course. But business name is different than product name. They don't necessarily have to be, but generally they are. And so when you talk about selection of a business name, obviously one of the first steps you want to take is make sure that the name is available. You want to go in and check the Secretary of State databases to make sure that that name is even available before you sign yourself up for that, and certainly before you start promoting it as a trade name. You want to search and perform a relevant trademark search You want to conduct internet searches to see if there are any other common law uses or things that might be confusing. With the internet, one of the considerations is, you've got the .coms, the .nets, the whatever, .org, whatever's. And now, in the last couple of years, there are a lot of domain registries that you can do. And so, obviously, with the internet, there's a lot of confusion as to who's who and what's what. And so merely kind of doing a lot of that research, typing in different variations of your name, if it sounds, quirky or anything like that, just to see what comes up, to see how closely you can get to securing the domains that you're interested in around your business, and making sure that it's not too confusing that if you even just mention the name and then somebody goes to type it in and they're going to end up somewhere else or on somebody else's page, right? That could always be very confusing and somewhat frustrating to consumers to try to find you. When we talk about domains, there's no harm in going in and registering the domain names and taking ownership of those right away. It's obviously better to do that when it's quiet and nobody knows what you're up to, than if you've started making a little bit of noise, because then that's when people try to go in and reserve names and do some strange tactical, if you will, things around domains. So you want to go in and secure them. At some point later, if you decide you don't need them or don't want them, you can give them up. But once you do, just be careful. It's hard to get them back. If you have done your work and done a preliminary search, make sure that it's then cleared for use. So go ahead and proceed with filing with your Secretary of State, getting the domain secured. File your applications for trademark or service mark. You guys know the difference between a trademark and a service mark? Nope. So trademark is basically around products. Services are services based. So you have goods and services. So if you're delivering, if you're in the service industry, you want to do a service mark. And of course, if you're going outside the United States, look for any other requirements to file for registrations outside of the U.S. And then in some cases, you may choose to do a fictitious name filing, kind of a DBA. It's not all that common, but people still do it. And so if you think that you want to go that route, again, investigate the reasons for that, why you would want to do it. It certainly is confusing. And then go ahead and secure those DBAs as well. Any questions on any of that so far? And then choosing a business location. Interestingly, this is a concept that once a year through the Junior Achievement Program, I go teach a whole day session to fourth graders on entrepreneurship based solely on choosing a business location. And it actually is kind of fun to teach it to you guys because it's a really cool concept. But it's really understanding your proximity to availability of the resources around you, whether that's human resources, capital resources, natural resources. There are considerations that you need to take into account. When you talk about proximity to customers, suppliers, and distributors, think about it in terms of overall expense to your business. If everybody's, there's no reason why it can't be, and in most cases, in large manufacturing situations, your supply chain is spread all over the world in certain cases. But you want to see how agile you are to working with those people, because while we can get a lot of things done electronically these days and over the internet, and even flights are relatively cheap, they're all still the cost of doing business. And especially when you're starting out, you want to be able to reach those people quickly and easily and course correct where needed. And if you've overcomplicated things, or if they're difficult to get to, or if there's language barriers that you need to overcome, those are all considerations that you should have, as you're starting things up. A lot of this may change as you go through the process, but trying to understand how all those factors play into your business and the operations of your business, and definitely the expense of running your business. Whether you plan to buy or rent real estate, it's going to be probably extraordinarily rare that you're going to be able to find a facility that's going to be move-in ready to go. That's not going to have some sort of additional cost expense to you for, setup or build out. In addition to, any facility-related services, you got to look at compliance. You definitely don't think that you can start up your business operation in the middle of your neighborhood where there may be zoning prohibitions. You want to make sure that there are no other regulations that are going to then come in and bar you from continuing to do what it is that you need to do. If you're in a situation where you've got some sort of waste product, understanding what the requirements are for those types of waste collection and removal. Any utility companies, all the setup fees, whether in a lot of the older buildings, they're not set up for internet, they're not set up for fiber, they're not set up for voice over IP or any of that stuff. So those can end up being quite costly for you if you don't understand what your needs are. Square footage, accessibility, making sure people can get to you and get to you kind of readily and easily. Whether or not that's not just whether or not you plan to have customers come to your place. That's people who you're dealing with. And then, other tax considerations, again, whether you're buying or renting, and the implications on your business expenses there. If you plan to have employees, what type of employees, for what job classification, are they, immediately in that area? Are they going to have to travel very far? Is it going to be easy for them to get there? Those are all considerations, because employees, it's got to be, relatively worth their while as well, right? If you're offering a $12 an hour job, but they've got to travel 35 miles to get there and sit in an hour and a half of traffic, you might not get the type of employees that you're searching for, or you may have high turnover, and high turnover is a costly factor for your business. So you want to make sure that you're offering and reaching good quality employees that are gonna be able to reach you and your business, and then understanding any employment-related issues. Choice of law and choice of forum for nexus of business. That's a complicated thing. We're not going to get into it here tonight, but that's something that you should, as you're setting up your business entity, that's also kind of one of the factors that help you determine what type of classification of business you want to establish. And then, of course, equipment and warehouse needs, which basically goes back to compliance with utilities and regulations. Your business license and business permits. Now, those are different. Those are different than, I have a business, it's Acme Business, I'm now set up as a limited liability partnership, I have a product name, now I also need business licenses. I have to have a way to be able to then do business. So, different cities have different requirements for obtaining business licenses. In Rancho Bernardo, there's the taxation office. You can go there, you can get your resale license filed there, and some other business setup information through them. But the nature of your business also helps determine what types of license and what types of permits that you might need. And again, those vary by city. And of course, depending on those is also determines what fees you end up having to pay. And they're not one-time fees. There's other maintenance fees, annual fees that you have to pay on top of that. So kind of keep that in mind. And then from a tax perspective, because you got to always configure the tax man's going to come knocking, you need a federal ID number, FEIN, federal employee number if you have employees, or EIN. Which is a employer identification number. So once you start selling, you got to collect taxes and you got to pay somebody. So make sure that you file for your federal your tax ID number. That's also related to resale licenses as well. So one of the business licenses is also a resale license. So in certain industries, you can apply for a resale license, which allows you to go to your vendors, buy product tax-free that you will then use to create a product and then sell, for which you then collect taxes for, and that's how you repay those. It's always a catch. You should always consider insurance. How many of you own a home, car, rent, anything? Anyone not have insurance in their life? I hope no hands means everyone has some form of insurance. Yeah. So insurance is a must for your business. And this is also something that as your business needs change, your insurance requirements will also change. There's some basic packages, if you will, starter packages, that when you review your business with your carrier, they'll help you determine kind of like what are the minimums you should have. Workers' comp is definitely one of them here in California. You can't have any employees without a workers' comp insurance. But depending on, again, on what it is that you plan to do, there are certain levels of insurance that you have to have. This is something I deal with on a daily basis with all of my customers and clients, making sure that depending on, and it's always on a case-by-case basis, there's general application, insurance baseline or blanket requirements that you should carry. But then again, depending on what the product or service is, what's the level of risk, what's the level of exposure, we may add other requirements to that list. Some of those are listed here. Key man or key person is basically a policy that pays out if something horrible happens to the most critical person on your team and now your business could suffer a loss or some damage. Commercial liability, property damage, personal injury, advertising injury. Advertising is something that people don't take into consideration, and it's very important because if you really read the internet these days, there's always issues around companies that have advertised a product that didn't do or say what you had claimed. And so that's one of the things to be very careful about is when you're making, and we'll get into it in a future topic, is around advertising claims and making sure that you have the right coverage to protect yourself in the event that something's been said or done inappropriately with respect to your advertising. One that's not on here is also cyber liability, employee dishonesty, those types of things. And so, again, depending on the nature of your product or service, depending on how you're going to operate your business, those are some other key considerations. Also environmental. You may be required to carry some sort of environmental coverage, again, if there's any sort of issue with respect to waste materials or things of that nature. And it's really to protect your company from claims that would be made by other people. Whether that's a product liability issue, I mentioned an advertising issue, something you've made catches on fire, so you have those types of issues as well. So you want to make sure that you are adequately covered. And again, you may start out small, your coverages may be small, your limits may be small, but over time those will probably need to increase as your volumes and your business grows. But that's a conversation that you should regularly have with your insurance carrier to make sure that you're on the right track, because you definitely don't want to get into a situation where you have a claim that isn't going to be covered, because it's going to come from somewhere, and hopefully it'll come from the insurance and not from the depths of your pockets. Intellectual property. So this is a topic that we cover in depth and have covered in depth. If you go online to our website, sdinventors.org, you will find lots of information about prior presentations on intellectual property. So we're not going to get into a ton of detail on what it is, but when launching a product, you need to consider certain intellectual property issues. One, making sure that if you do have employees or you're working with third parties, that you understand and it's clear and in writing as to who owns that intellectual property. Excuse me, let me take a quick sip here. I'm dying. Make no mistake that just because you've hired Joe, and doesn't matter how much you pay Joe, and Joe likes you and he's your employee, but if he makes something unless it's in writing in an employer-employee contract or in a contractor's contract, you don't own that intellectual property, and you definitely don't want to get in a situation later where you're trying to fight over it, because that's going to be costly to you as a business. So it's very important that you identify clear and distinct ownership of intellectual property that's being created. You definitely want to avoid any infringement of somebody else's intellectual property. So as you're going through the product development, as you're going through the patent prosecution process, you definitely want to have taken the necessary steps to not only clear your path to intellectual property ownership, but that then you make sure that you have secured it in the appropriate way, whether that's patents, copyrights, trademarks, even trade secrets if you decide to go down that route. And so all of those things are associated with your business as well as the product, down to the product design, to the product packaging, which is trade dress. So make sure that you have done your homework and that, again, it's clear and distinct ownership of that intellectual property. Because then you need to make sure that for the long term you have the plan to then protect that ongoing. Just like a kid, once you birth it, you got to keep taking care of it. Same thing with intellectual property. Once you've identified it, once you've secured your path for it, you got to keep maintaining it and keep seeking protection around it. It's not a one-time thing, it's a constant. So make sure that your business plan kind of includes those aspects of it. So that may be meeting regularly, even after your patent is issued, with a patent attorney. If you find out that you think somebody may be infringing, you may have to institute, some cease and desist activities. You may have to engage someone to assist you with basically third-party monitoring, which is just checking on occasion, make sure there's nothing out there that may be problematic for you. And those are costs. Those are considerations that you need to take into account. Like I said, last month we talked about manufacturing. This is a little bit more of the kind of overall supply chain. So, all of those third parties that you may work with that will help you bring your product to market. Every company's needs are different. You may need every single one of these in this bullet list. You may need just a subset of them. You definitely will use at least a few of these, because none of you are going to be in the situation where you're going to be doing it all by yourself. Having that level of broad expertise is just, slim to none. But understanding, who your supply chain is, how they fit into the bigger picture. Again, this is something that over time may change as your company grows. You may start off with a small contract manufacturer that can produce product for you up to, so much in terms of volume, and then you might just explode and need someone that can do, large volume production. So you may have to switch manufacturers. Something may change in the supply chain or distribution channel, and you may have to do some consolidation there. But again, these are basically third parties that you may be working with throughout your kind of ecosystem of your business. So identifying them, understanding who they are is key. Let's see. So one of the things to consider there is, when looking at your supply chain, who you might need, then do some due diligence. This is a step that surprisingly gets skipped far too often, not just by small companies, startups, entrepreneurs. I can't tell you how many large companies skip this step. And sometimes it just comes down to because someone in a past life had a relationship or had a buddy that had a business, and hey, let's throw it their way, thinking that guy's not going to do me wrong, or he's going to get the job done. And so they skip this step, and it's a terrible mistake to make. can be very costly to your business. So you want to make sure that you have done some level of due diligence with respect to all of your third parties that you're going to work with, but in particular those that are going to be responsible for the manufacture, supply, distribution, basically of your product. So when we talk about due diligence, we're talking about who are they? You know, what do they do? Where do they come from? How does their business operate? It's quick and easy way to do this. You can engage companies to do more deeper dive, but a lot of this information is readily available via the internet. So you can check their website and social media presence. You know, if you type in their name and you get a 404 error found message, that could be an immediate red flag, right? If you see that maybe their website, it hasn't been updated in 5 years, maybe they're not as up to date as you think they are. There's little clues, little key things that you can immediately just target and pop out. You know, there are things that exist today, however, on the internet where companies can, you know, engage to, you know, scrub the internet for bad press or, you know, negative comments and things. So you got to be careful about that, because I guarantee you there's no business out there that's just glorious and has 100% positive views from everyone that they engage with. They've just done a hell of a lot better job at scrubbing the internet. See, it makes it harder to find those things. So sometimes you really got to drill down, try a lot of different ways to search before you can, you know, make sure that, you know, they're a good, viable company to do business with. You definitely want to check their the SEC to see if there's any, you know, any violations out there against them. That's public, particularly if they're a publicly held company. If they are a publicly held company, you know, there are annual reports, there's 10Ks, kinds of stuff out there that you can go out and look for and find and review. When you're looking through a public company's reports, it's arduous, it can be daunting, but if you know what to look for, you look at their financials, but there's also sections in there where they have to identify key litigation issues that they may be facing, or some potential market factors that could impact negatively their business, which could be, you know, red flags for you. So you kind of want to scout through that and look for those little tidbits of information that you might find really informative. Criminal sanctions and litigation, health safety violations, big deals. And those are the things that make the internet really interesting these days, because those things tend to become public very fast. But you definitely want to make sure that whoever it is that you're doing business with are good business people, because whatever they do bad equates to you. And that direct association, whether you have anything to do with them or not, the fact that someone is going to find out your business is linked to these bad guys, that's going to affect you and your business and your brand. And so you need to think about that overall in terms of your brand reputation as well. So make sure that you're doing business with good people. There are, you know, definite privacy and data security considerations, particularly if you're going to do business in the EU, which are far more stringent, but California's just passed some regulations. There are several other states in the US that have followed suit. So really understanding how privacy and data security affect you, your business, and certainly how they may have affected your partner's business. If they have been recently in the news because of a massive breach, you may want to think about how that's going to affect you as well. Think about, you know, their compliance policies. So one of the things we talk about when I'm engaging with a vendor is, do they have a vendor code of conduct, and does it match your values? You know, do they use, what are their practices, whether they're a U.S. entity or whether they're a foreign entity, ensuring that, you know, they have good policies. They have good policies around wage and employment, that they're treating their employees well, that they're getting paid when they're supposed to. They're getting paid what they're supposed to get paid. That, you know, that there are no environmental issues, that, you know, things aren't being illegally dumped, those types of things. And so you want to make sure that they can share with you those relevant policies, procedures, conduct guidelines that they impose and enforce in their own company, and that they are at least as stringent as what you would like to see if it were your own business. Because even though you're not going to be the one manufacturing these things, or maybe you're not going to be the one assembling, and maybe you're not the one with a 50-person workforce, but you're still associated with them, and you want to make sure that what comes out of that is, some goodness, right? And then certainly, if you're in an industry that's highly regulated, there are some other considerations, medical devices, children's products, pet products, toys, things of that nature. Electronics obviously have UL certification requirements. So again, it's going to require some effort and work on your part to kind of help identify these, people that you're going to work with and what certifications or what policies and processes that they have in place that are going to benefit both of you. Continuing on that, what you want to also consider with them is, do they have the right licenses? A lot of companies, particularly those of you who might be trying to work with a manufacturer who can say, oh, you know what, I have licenses with Disney and the NFL or the NBA, and I can produce hats and t-shirts and whatever and put all these logos on them, and your product fits right well into that, and I can just slap all this stuff right on your product and get it right out the door faster. You want to make sure that they actually have the right licenses to do that. Because anyone can go on the internet and pull a logo and slap it on something. Doesn't make it legal, definitely doesn't make it right. And so you want to make sure that anyone who kind of makes those claims and says, I have all the right licenses, that they can prove that they have those licensing deals and they can back those up. And the contract will help support that as well, because they'll have to make that as a representation in the contract. Because if they say, I have this or I can do this, and they don't or they can't, then that's a misrepresentation, and that's a whole other realm that you're going to need to get into. But definitely make sure that whatever they say they have, and if they say they can get it, that they can get it. In connection with that, again, quality control, technology. So one of the other considerations there is if you are going to enter into an industry that's heavily based on technology, that they understand advancements in technology and that they are preparing for those advancements. They have a path to adopting whatever those advancements are, because this stuff is rapidly changing. And if they're behind the 8 ball and then you're starting out with something new, you're going to be behind the curve, and it may be something that's not going to be beneficial to the market, because it may be outdated before you even get there. So whatever it is, just make sure that you've partnered with somebody that really understands that those changes in technology and can support them. That they're responsive. Worst thing is you get out there, you start doing business, and you call and call and call and email and email. You can't get a hold of anybody. You start to get a little nervous, worried if there's something going on. There probably is. So make sure that they're highly responsive to you, not just to get your business, because they will at first. They're going to be eager to get your business. They're going to want to wine and dine you or do whatever it takes to make you feel comfortable and secure, and hope, but make sure that you keep that engagement going. If you're talking about a large-scale supplier or manufacturer, it definitely doesn't hurt you to ask them to see samples of other products that they produce for other people. If they're marketable products, they should have no problem showing that to you, right? And so you want to see what they are. You want to see what the quality is. You want to make sure that it looks like something that kind of represents where you're going with your particular product. Because if they're producing junk, you're going to get junk, right? So make sure that you can request samples of things that they have manufactured, and make sure it's recent, not something that they produced a long time ago and actually don't do business with that company anymore either. So customer references plays into that. So they should be able to provide you with a list of relevant customer references, people that they continue to do business with, and you may even find companies that no longer do business with them, and you still might want to talk to those people. You might want to find out, well, why don't they do business with you anymore? Could be that they've simply outgrown them. Could be that something went bad. But you want to try to have that opportunity to figure out what happened in those breakup scenarios. And then where you can, plan an on-site visit. You want to look at the equipment. You want to see how things are being run. You want to make sure that everything, everything doesn't have to look brand spanking new and shiny and crisp and all that, but it needs to look like it works. You don't want to go into a facility that's run down or has any sort of problems. How they're handling materials, how they're storing materials, because when you get into a manufacturing situation, again, you're probably not going to be dealing with a manufacturer that's only manufacturing your product. They're manufacturing products for other people as well. So, where's the stuff being stored? Is it commingled? Is it all just thrown into a closet altogether? Making sure that there's good separation of equipment and materials, because that's stuff you're paying for. And so if you can't account for it, if they can't account for it, if they don't have good inventory and management practices, your stuff's going to go missing. And figuring out where it is and getting them to pay for it or pay you back for it is difficult and very strenuous on your relationship with that supplier. And then any other kind of critical dependencies that you can think of. So again, these are all part of the due diligence efforts. But the key thing is, this is going to set you up for success for the third parties that you're dealing with. And it will also show that as you proceed through the process of getting your product to market and you go talk to investors, financiers, you're showing them, hey, I've done my work. Here's how I vetted these people. Here's how they came into being part of this business. They're not just fly-by-nights. They're not just some schmo that I found, one ABCD, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And again, it's great that you can pick somebody to partner with that's a friend of a friend or someone that you used to do business with, but that doesn't mean you should still skip this step because things happen. And this will help kind of solidify and give you some kind of non-objective approach to your process and help substantiate your business. Product liability considerations. This is a big one. And so products carry risk. Every product carries some level of risk. You need to know what those are and how they associate with your particular product and how not only how they relate to the product, but as part of the overall manufacturing and supply chain too, how those risks might even get introduced. Certainly things that are consumed have greater risk. And then again, when you talk about medical versus children's products and things like that, those all have their other certain risk factors that carry different types of product liability considerations. But when you talk about that, you kind of need to think about it, holistically and think of it as a safety program. So as the product itself is being manufactured and produced, you want to make sure that there are safety protocols in place, not only along the manufacturing line, but throughout the supply chain process. You want to make sure that you have a team, whether it's a third party that you hire or internally, to help conduct some sort of safety audits on the product, and again with your third parties. Making sure that, of course, you have the insurance that covers that if it's required, and that the contracts with your third parties delegates that level of responsibility and liability, so that potentially there's some spread there, but it's clear, because you can't get into a product liability situation and start pointing fingers at each other saying, well, this is your fault. No, it's your fault. If it's not identified, if it's not clear and distinct, it's going to be probably everybody's fault, because someone that certainly has a claim is going to go after as many parties that they feel are responsible for whatever that claim is, and certainly those that have the deep pockets. You want to ensure that when it comes to product labeling and packaging, that you really understand what those requirements are. Certainly nutritional packaging has a lot of advisements, has a lot of things around, how you report claims of nutritional value and the product breakdown and the ingredients and all that stuff, which are getting far more stringent these days, particularly around nutrition count and calories and all that stuff, and particularly around claims of ingredients. There's a lot of controversy right now around organic and what does organic mean, or what does all natural mean. Certainly, if you want to be careful about making certain claims. This product, if you drink this or eat this, you'll lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks. If you can't back that up, you're gonna have someone like me to go, "You lied," because nothing's happened. But you definitely want to make sure that you understand what the product labeling requirements are for your particular product. When it comes to kids' toys, there are definitive product labeling considerations. You need to know what those are and make sure that they exist. So when you go through the manufacturing process, whoever you're working that's going to do that packaging also should understand this and be able to help guide you in some of this as well. Product warranties, and then how do you handle it? What's your plan of action should, in worst case scenario, something go wrong and there's a failure or there's a claim that your product failed or your product caused someone some harm or some injury. So you really need to have some sort of pre-crisis management in place. This is not a reactive. This is a proactive approach. So understanding who do they call, how do they call, what do we do? Does your contract include any product recall provisions in it? Who's responsible for that product recall, and how is that handled? How is that handled at the retail level if product has to be pulled off the shelf? We've seen a lot of that recently. I think the pet food industry has suffered that tremendously recently. And so those things need to kind of have a plan of action in place. Depending on who you are and where you are and how widespread you are, you may even have to hire a PR crisis management company to help walk you through it. But those are all things that, unfortunately, you need to think about proactively, have a plan in place so that worst case scenario, something happens, then you can react. And you can react in a measured approach, and you have a plan, and you can deal with it accordingly rather than, oh no, what do we do? And everybody's panicked. You're still going to be panicked, but at least it's going to be prepared panic. Okay? And then again, you'll see, I've talked about insurance now, at least 3 times already, because it all kind of ties back to that as well. Making sure that you have the right liability considerations and insurance kind of go hand in hand. Your marketing plan. So again, we're going to touch on this as a separate topic altogether in probably 1 or 2 presentations in the preceding months. But here we want to make sure that as part of your overall business plan, you can show how you plan to market the product. How do you plan to get it into the consumer's awareness and into their hands and into their pockets to spend the money to buy it? So you can develop your own in-house marketing. Most of the time you're going to work with a third-party agency. Sometimes you might work with a third-party agency that can handle kind of a lot of aspects of it. You may seek 1 or 2 that have specialization in, maybe a digital marketing, maybe a traditional print media marketing. Again, it really depends on who it is you're trying to reach and how you're trying to reach them. And so you need to really have kind of an overall integrated approach. And additionally, when I say integrated, you don't want to have kind of like a piecemeal marketing plan. You want to make sure that regardless of what space you're advertising in, that the space has a look and feel that is continuous across all of those platforms. And so, they all look the same, they kind of sound the same, they all blend together. Because if you go on one platform and you're promoting yourself one way, and you go on another platform, you're promoting yourself another way, you look schizophrenic, and then people don't know who you are. And it could be that they might find you on multiple platforms. So the message has to be consistent in how you do that. So having kind of an integrated marketing plan and making sure that whatever advertisers you're working with understand that and can help plan that for you, then the better off you're going to be. So you can do that through, again, these various mediums, traditional and print media advertising. That's the billboards, that's the commercials, that's, radio, that's, newspapers, all those types of traditional media that, we've become accustomed to. But then the growing other areas, online advertising and marketing, and that includes social media. When I say social media, I mean the internet, essentially, because there are a lot of different platforms across the internet that utilize marketing, and each one of them is different in their approach to marketing. And so you need to make sure that you're partnering someone, if you're going to go social, that understands those different platforms and how to target consumers on those various platforms. Direct marketing is really that one-to-one marketing, and that can be done on in both traditional and digital as part of the overall marketing plan. That's basically, once I've reached someone, how do you continue to engage them? Sometimes that's through kind of a consumer loyalty program, but that's that one-to-one ongoing consumer engagement. If you have a product or service that's not kind of a one and done, but some sort of repeat business, you want to make sure that you maintain that relationship so they do come back for that repeat business. Sales, promotion, contests, sweepstakes. Sweepstakes are fun to enter and fabulous if you win them, but they require regulation. And you really need to make sure that if you plan on running any sort of contest or promotion or sweepstakes, that you're working with an agency that understands how those things work, and that they understand how to put those rules and programs in place, because if they're not done right and consumers are going to complain, there could be issues of fraud, there could be issues of non-regulatory compliance. Some states require you to be bonded to run a sweepstakes. You got to indicate what states you're eligible for, what are the age requirements to enter. There are winner requirements. If somebody does win, how do you prove eligibility? There's just a lot that goes into it. So if you plan on doing any of those things, please, please, please partner with agencies that understand how they work, because it's not just throw something out there and see who wins. Sponsorship arrangements, those are usually reserved for large-scale companies, and hopefully you will all get there one day. But any of you go to, watch TV, watch sports events on TV, all the commercials that take place during the Super Bowl. If you're in stadium, whether it's at a concert or at a sports event, all the signage that's in and around the arenas, all the activities that take place during halftime, basically all of those are sponsorship agreements. They're opportunities for you to market your company in partnership and in sponsorship of another organization. So there's a lot of joint marketing there. There's some co-branding opportunities there. So if you get to the point where you're going to be entering in that sort of realm, just understand some of the requirements that go into sponsorship marketing. Your website, your mobile app, all of those should have basically as much of the same skin as you can across the various platforms. And when I say skin, I'm saying they need to look and feel as close to each other as possible. Relatively easy to do, but again, just make sure that whoever's doing your web development or mobile development, that they're either the same company or they're working very closely together, so that, again, you don't look like you have, two different personalities out there, because a lot of people still access you and your business through the computer, a physical computer, but more and more these days, they're accessing you first on mobile, and then at some point maybe they'll go back to the computer to find you. But you want to make sure that, again, if they're looking for you in either one, that they look the same in either case. Also make sure that when it comes to mobile and desktop, that if they're pulling you up on a mobile, that the mobile version is designed to be looked and viewed on a mobile, because various people make the mistake of just thinking they could just mirror and slap it as on a mobile device, and they don't always work. Sometimes the buttons don't work, or things don't do what they're supposed to, or even the fonts and things like that don't really appear as they should. And again, those things just create confusion and frustration. And so anything you could do to kind of minimize that in the consumer's eyes, the better off for your brand. And referral programs. That kind of more is along the lines of part of your supply chain. So, Amazon offers referral programs, and some of the other distribution channels offer referral programs. Influencers, if you're going to work with an influencer, that's basically a type of a referral program. You're generally paying someone to promote your business via whatever their channels are, whether usually there's social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Essentially, that's a type of a referral program, understanding the nuances of those, how they work, and how those people are going to get paid for referring people to you and to your site. Finance, money. Where's the money going to come from? So depending on the type of business entity that you formed and your overall financial goals, you can achieve funding from a variety of sources. There's no one way. There's definitely no right way. And with the age of the internet and campaign funding or crowdfunding or crowdsourcing, that's really changing the landscape of how businesses get funded. But in general, obviously there are, obtaining loans from banks or other lenders, issuing some short-term or long-term debt securities. You may issue equity securities, which means, hey, I'm small, I really can't pay you a lot, so you might engage in some sort of equity agreement where, maybe offer some future stocks of shares, some sort of convertible notes, something like that. Some of that is dependent on what type of entity you entered into and whether you can actually do that. Or at some point you may have to make some changes there. But the two kind of go hand in hand when it comes to some of that equity funding stuff. Bootstrapping is really, you figuring out how to self-fund through friends and family, which is obviously how a lot of us start out in the beginning, and hopefully get to the point where we have investors, or we can go in front of investors for, large money. And then well into the future, it's possible that you may go from being a private company to a public company, do an IPO, which would be tremendous. Love to see some of you guys as an IPO issued company. But those are all sources of current and future funding. But when you talk about your business plan, you want to make sure that the source of the funds are identified, they're clear, because whoever it is that you're going to do business with is going to need to know that you're secure, right? A manufacturer may not necessarily want to do business with you if they don't think they're going to get paid for their work. So there's got to be some way to prove to each other that basically there's a source of legitimate funding that is going to secure or back the company. Could also mean that for a majority of the initial startup of your company, you're not getting paid, but you're working really hard. But identifying as part of your business plan the initial sources of funding, understanding that they're secured, and then you have some sort of plan if you're going to do any sort of future rounds of funding, how you're going to get to that point, and kind of mapping that out as a proposed plan. When you talk about the factors between debt and equity, certainly there are a lot of factors there. Again, one, as I said, the entity structure, but also how you plan to retain control over the business, whether that's a concern. Nobody really wants to take on a ton of debt when they start a company because you're kind of starting upside down. You're going to have some, definitely. That's just part of startup costs, but you don't really want to put yourself in a situation where you're completely upside down and making it difficult to really get to that ramp up phase. Again, later on, hopefully you won't be down here in that IPO stage, but until you get there, really understanding kind of, again, that securitization of your funding plan, because when you do get in front of lenders, whether it's just a bank lender for a bank loan, they want to know how they're going to get paid back. And they need to understand what, as a company, what your debt to asset ratio is and where your liabilities come from before they're going to loan you any money. And definitely when you start going into investment stage, angel investors or capital investors, they're really going to want to understand that as well, right? And then they're also going to want to know if you have taken on other debt or liability through bank loans or other people, even if you do some sort of equity ownership share, with friends or family or others, partners, they're going to want to understand how all that structure works, and where those assets are being secured from, and certainly where all the liabilities play into the overall structure of the business, because definitely liability is going to be their number one concern before they even bother to crack open the checkbook. And so you may already have exposed yourself to rejection of lending opportunities if you don't have your plan of sources of funds identified and basically legitimized. So, again, this is kind of the executive summary. What we went through tonight is not your entire business plan. It is a snapshot of some of the core parts of your plan. And again, it's the start. It's just like, if any of you take this point in time right now and start to write a memoir or an autobiography, that's going to change in 5 years, right? A lot of things can happen. So it needs to be something that you go back and you revisit time and again and make changes and adapt as you need to, because different parts of it you may not have up front, but as much of this as you can start to put together and plan up front, so that as you get to these milestones, you have what you need, and then it's just a matter of adding and modifying as you go through the process. So what I would like you to do is, you all should have the worksheet from tonight. This is going to be our brainstorming session. The worksheet is really just an opportunity for you to work either by yourself or with a partner to kind of go through the worksheet, maybe ask each other questions, bounce ideas off each other, kind of starting to fill that out, get a plan, get an idea for what would go into your business plan. This is an opportunity for you to take advantage of the people here and around you. So please take about 20 minutes or so at this time to work through that. We'll come back, we'll talk about that a little bit more, and then we'll do some Q&A. Okay? And I'm going to get some water before I die.
How you doing over there, man? Good? A lot of good stuff there. And this other guy, see, I just switched around.
You're fine. Snooze, you lose. Okay, we're going to talk for a few more minutes, take care of a couple of things, and give you guys some more networking time after. So, did any of you actually get a chance or take some time and work on your worksheets a little bit?
A little bit.
Yeah? Did you find it helpful, useful, something you're going to take back and keep in your little arsenal of product preparation and planning stuff? So that's our goal. That's our intent anyway. So with each month, if you haven't been here before, and please plan on coming in the future, every topic, every conversation, every presentation, we will be preparing and providing you with some sort of take-home worksheet on that particular topic. The idea is that you'll take these things with you, and maybe you're not there yet, maybe you don't have all the information, but that you'll take them and kind of use it to build your playbook, if you will, on how to get your product from concept to commercialization. So if you kind of, if you are coming regularly, keep these in a place where you can refer back to them as you need them, and write them in pencil if you need to, so that as things change, you can change these things up. But we hoped that when by doing this, it gives you a little bit of a takeaway. If nothing, something you're taking notes on for tonight's session. So if any of you took a look at this and worked on it or did anything with it, do you have anything that you'd like to share about it?
I'd just like to share that I thought your presentation was extremely informational and helpful. There were things in there that I haven't thought about yet. Is that going to be on the SDIF website, the PowerPoint?
This presentation is live on Facebook right now. And it is also will be posted on our San Diego Inventors Forum website, sdinventors.org. So you can go there and view the presentation again anytime you wish. Pause it, stop it, look at this again. Relive the experience in the moment. Yes?
I do have a question.
Yes.
In regards to the multiple use for your product, you had mentioned that that I guess to categorize or like you said, you develop in your product, you find out if there's like more multiple uses. Does that require additional patents, or can you patent it all as one idea?
Yeah, not necessarily. When we talk about multiple uses, we're really talking about multiple market opportunities. So when you think about your product and think about a lot of products around your home or that you might use, there may be alternative uses for those. And so while you may have originally thought, hey, I'm going to develop this product and it'd be great for X particular use, you might find out, oh, there's a subcategory or another market opportunity that I can sell into. And you could have two different marketing and licensing and revenue streams from one product. That's one way. Another thing is when we're talking about subcategory of products or related products. We're talking about a core product that might have add-on components, or if you do this attachment, it could do this, or if you do this, it could do this. Those other types of considerations. Some of those are more unique in terms of product development aspects, but always open up your mind a little bit to the other creative and marketing opportunities that are there. And that's going to be really important because also when it comes to not just the manufacturing process, but when it comes to the marketing, and if you end up going down a licensing path, that may open up two completely source of licensing opportunities with completely different revenue and outcomes for you. So you could license, product down one channel, and you could go in a totally different direction with another, and the two don't necessarily compete.
But, okay, you answered the biggest part of my question. The second part I was asking you is that, okay, say for instance, like if I license a product for one particular thing, or not license, I'm sorry, trademark or patent a product for one particular use. Okay, and someone else gets my product and they come out with something similar to that. Am I still protected under my original patent?
Well,
if it's being used for something else.
Well, those are kind of different nuanced scenarios, right? So when you're patenting, when you're obtaining a patent, you're teaching someone how to make that, use it, do whatever it is it's supposed to do. And you can cover materials and classifications and all that other stuff. But what I'm kind of more specifically talking about is, for example, and this comes up a lot in my presentations, is as a hobbyist, I'm a metalsmith. I make jewelry with metal. And there's a lot of things, tools, things that I use to do that weren't designed specifically for that purpose. They are being repurposed because we find out, I can use that tool that I can go get at Harbor Freight or Home Depot for $5, but if I go to my jeweler's supply catalog, it's $50, and so it's an alternative use. It's a completely different purpose, same tool, but we've found another use for it. There's a lot of things that fall into that type of category, particularly in the consumer product space, and that's mostly what we're speaking to. What you're getting into is a little bit slightly different nuance, and so when you talk to your patent agent or your attorney, whoever's helping you file your patent or your provisional, you want to talk to them, and part of your process, and I'm sorry David had to leave early, and John just left as well, but what they will talk to you about is when you're going through that process, your job is to help them identify as well all these other types of uses. So you make sure you want to cover as much of that as you can also in your application process. Okay.
And I'd just like to say that David is really good at that, because when he filed my patent, we covered so many different things.
Yeah. Those guys,
David Waller.
yeah, those guys will help you sort that particular piece out from an intellectual property perspective. and securing that. And then again, the other part is to think about market and revenue opportunities and where you can place that product for more use. Uh-huh.
Just say like you filed for like the utility patent, you can still file like PPAs, to cover more stuff.
Yeah, so the question is, if you file the patent, can you file PPAs or continuation parts and add-ons? Yes, there are certain things that you can do later to go back and cover things that you might want to add to your patent application or your patent prosecution. But those are things that you should discuss with your patent agent or patent attorney.
Okay, so that's like just say like, if you're doing it, because you like just say like you're trying to steal your ideal from yourself, different variations.
Yeah, those are ways to capture variations on your original product idea, but there are limitations on that. It's not a broad stroke thing. You can't go, oh, I thought about it and it's used way over here, and now I want to go way over here. If you're too far outside of your original walls, you may not be able to go over here and capture that. So that's why it's really important to kind of go through that whole brainstorming aspect of it when you're in that more preliminary phase, to make sure that one, you've done as much exploration and capturing at that particular point, but in the offshoot that maybe you think of an idea a little bit further down the road, hopefully this is broad enough that you can include that, because if you've gone too far outside that, you might not be able to go in that other direction because it may be precluded and it might be deemed prior art or things like that. So just be careful. Okay. Anything else on that particular aspect? Okay. Anyone else have any other questions about the topic tonight and some of the material information that we covered? Y'all got it? Are you all ready to write a business plan? Have any of you even written a business plan yet? All right. Are these things covered in the plan that you've started working on or have written?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything that you included that we didn't cover tonight?
Pretty much everything is in there, covered.
Okay.
That we talked about.
Can we talk about? Mm-hmm.
Probably competitive landscape, SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
It's probably something that I have in my business plan.
Yeah, it was in the first slide as one of the bullets, the competitive landscape, or know your competitors. Again, we didn't touch on that specifically tonight because that's a whole another level of topic and understanding as you get further down the road. But absolutely, that's definitely part of the plan. Let's see. There you go. Analyze the competition and market trends. Yeah. So yeah, that's where that type of analysis would go into, again, because you may think that you have the most novel, unique, creative idea and there's nothing out there like that. But the reality is everybody has competition. No matter who you are, no matter what the product is, no matter what the space is, there's competition somewhere, and really need to understand who that is. Because then sometimes, and the reality is, it could be that competitor or perceived competitor may be who you want to end up partnering with. So really understanding kind of both sides of it help you as well. Because they also, when you do that, as some of that may show up in your due diligence through your supply chain, and you may find out that you're dealing with some of the same people. In some cases, that can be great. Other cases, not so great. You need to really understand how that can affect your relationship with those suppliers. I won't say most, because each situation is unique. But there are situations where there are, exclusivity arrangements. So, you may not be able to partner with somebody because they're locked into, an exclusive deal or exclusive manufacturing relationship with somebody else. And so kind of knowing that as part of your plan will help flush some of that stuff out too. So they kind of go hand in hand almost. Yes, sir.
Is there like a list of manufacturers somewhere that you can call on to, to see what kind of, to find out what they do and see if they can maybe manufacture your product?
In last month's presentation, Michelle has in her slide deck a list of manufacturers she works with and can recommend. Several of them are local, and so I would suggest you go back to that slide and take a look at that. And that she should be able to help you there, because I think she has a long drive home. She lives all the way, way up north, so she had to bug out.
When I went onto the website today, the last month's presentation was not in the library of.
I clicked on it yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't see it. Is it? Are they not in numerical order or something?
We're revamping the website, so can't remember it, but under sdinventors.org, there's a link. It says last month's presentation. Click right to it and go right over.
The one I was looking at where it has the sidebar with the different presentations and videos.
Oh yeah, that's that. Yeah, there's a direct link right from one of the main
so
pages.
It's not up there.
Danny, you had something?
Well, if you went on Facebook yesterday, it would not have worked.
Oh yeah, Facebook. That's right. I forgot about that. Okay, anything else on that topic? Okay, so that's the business plan worksheet. Again, this is a preliminary. This is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not everything that should go into a plan, but it's a good kind of starting point, again, for you to kind of start getting things in order and organized and ready. Let me skip back ahead here. So if you were not here, well, whether you were here last month or not, a couple things I want to touch on. There is a electronics and manufacturing show coming up at Del Mar in May, first part of May, Del Mar Electronics and Manufacturing Show. So if you're interested in that, I suggest you go to the website, take a look, find out if there's any exhibitors there that you may be interested in going and meeting and talking with. There is in Las Vegas in June 4th through the 6th is a licensing expo. So if you have any interest in licensing your product, you can go to the licensing expo. There are exhibitors from various industries that you can go and walk the booths. You can go online and request scheduled interviews and review your product with them for licensing deals. Those book up really fast. So if you have an interest, I suggest you go online and register and try to book for that. In addition, if you are interested in learning about licensing, because if you plan to go that route, while people like myself are licensing specialists, it's always good, and I always recommend to my clients that try to learn a little something about it so that we can engage in some good productive dialogue, and you understand what licensing is and what licensing isn't. They have a special lecture series where you can go in, and it's over 3.5 days, all different types of topics on subject matter around licensing, presented from all sorts of industry experts. You can gain a wealth of knowledge from that. Generally, it's a conference that I go to every year, but I'm not going to be there this year. But if you want to spend some time there, that's another show that I suggest for you. Also at Licensing Expo, there are some packaging reps there that you can go meet with, but there's also a separate show, Pack Expo. You can look that up and go to that one. On tonight's particular topics, business planning, if you need help in this area, here in San Diego, there's the Small Business Development Center. They also partner with some of the universities like Southwest Community College, where they offer a lot of business assistance for people starting out, small business assistance. They can help you with your business plan. They can talk to you about sourcing of funding and things like that. So that's a great local governmental resource. Over in Rancho Bernardo is the franchise tax and licensing agency. I can't remember what their actual name is, but they're there off of I think it's off Innovation Drive. So a lot of resources here in San Diego to help you. And coming up, let's see. that's it for that. So, as for basically San Diego Inventors Forum, you all found us. How many of you are here for the first time? Oh, awesome. And just quickly, how did you find us?
Actually, on the Facebook page.
Great.
Yeah, somebody told me about it on the Facebook page.
Fantastic.
A girlfriend and I were brainstorming on some ideas, and she said, "Oh, maybe there's a meeting up or whatever there's called." So found it on the website.
Awesome.
San Diego Inventors in Google.
Great.
I typed in San Diego Inventors and you guys popped up.
Yay.
Be
Good.
sure you sign up for the newsletter so you get the announcements.
Okay, on the website.
Yeah. So, just to like kind of know who we are, David was here earlier tonight. He had to leave a bit early. I'm Leslie. I am the San Diego Inventors Forum president. I've been involved in this organization since 2005, essentially as co-chair with Adrian, who moved and left me behind back in October. So I am happy to be up here doing this. Breathing, not breathing. Tomorrow, don't ask to, you won't be hearing anything from me for probably the next 2 days. David is our resident patent agent. He is also vice president of the organization. David is extraordinarily knowledgeable and helpful to those of you who are going through the patent prosecution phase, and that means filing for your patent application. David has offered, show of hands if you were interested in this, he may be willing to put on a separate, we don't know how many hours yet, but multi-hour session focused solely on how to prepare yourself to file a provisional patent application. Kind of all the what do you need to know, how to do it, how to plan for it, how to prepare for it, some of the pitfalls, because as you know, inventors, as people with shallow pockets, you know, I know that spending money on an attorney and even an agent can, you know, seems like a lot of burdensome cost to you. And so what David's offering to do is kind of help you through that initial process so that if you decide to try to DIY it, you'll be in a little bit better position. Because one of the drastic mistakes that you can make is if you decide to go to the DIY route on filing a provisional application, is it's too easy to mess up. And so if you leave things out, if you forget things, if you think, oh, I forgot, I should have thought that, that's probably too late. And so, you know, for him, if you've already started the process and then you try to go to an agent or an attorney and they got to clean up messes or mistakes that you've made, that's going to cost you more than if you just went with one in the first place. But he's willing to offer, like I said, a limited session, multi-hour workshop. If that's something you all are interested in, show of hands, and we can try to get something on the books. Don't know how much it's going to cost. It's not going to cost you a fortune, but that's something that we will plan for, and I think there's enough interest. I'll talk to him about doing that relatively soon. Sydney Wildsmith, he is our secretary. He's also been involved with the organization since 2011. Sydney is basically what he considers a creative facilitator, and unfortunately he's not here tonight because we were going to wish him a happy birthday. His birthday is tomorrow night, I believe. So if you're online and seeing us, Sydney, happy birthday. Sydney can help you in your kind of creative marketing aspects. So he does video production and a lot of things that can help you prepare for your marketing materials. And a lot of pre-planning for maybe even some information, marketing materials and things to go in front of investors and things like that. So Sydney's a good resource for that. And Tom is not here tonight. Tom is our newest SDIF member, and he can assist you in product development and support. If you want to reach out to any of these folks, you can find our information on the SD Inventors website, sdinventors.org, and reach out. Judith is returned tonight. We haven't seen her in quite a while. Glad to see her here tonight. Judith assists us from time to time in some of our marketing and newsletter efforts, and is going to help me in some future newsletter endeavors. So every month we do publish a very small newsletter. Just letting you know what the what that month's topic is going to be about. If we see any key information we think that you should know about that might be relevant to you, we'll include it in the newsletter. Hopefully we'll get to a point where we can beef it up and add a lot more to it. But right now it's short and sweet, and we get it out there. But also we have the Facebook page and we have the LinkedIn page. And so those are other two sources of information. We have other members that post things that they see from time to time that are relevant and you might find important and useful. So I would suggest you reach out on both platforms, because while the information specific about the club and meetings and things is going to be posted on both sites, the members may be different and the information you may get from members and each of those can be different, but both are definitely useful. So I would suggest you sign up for those as well. You'll receive the newsletter if you've registered out front with us and provided your email. If you're not getting the newsletter, that means I probably couldn't read your handwriting and it got bounced back. So if you're not getting it by next month, then the next time you're here, just check in and change your email address.
How would I contact you to talk about licensing?
You can find my information on the website.
On the website.
One final question for me. You did mention something about building a team earlier tonight, and if you're going to try to build a team. Have you guys ever covered that topic, and on like how do you go about trying to find somebody that's going to get behind your product and so forth?
Not explicitly, again, because every team is going to be slightly different in terms of who you need, and of course your team as you start out is going to change over time, and then depending on what route you take, certainly once you start going down the funding route, investor route, and establishing as a core business, that whole infrastructure is going to need to change. You may even have board member requirements and things like that, or advisor requirements, and so we can keep it under advisement and see if there's a way to present some information on that. But yeah, that's definitely a kind of a case-by-case situation. But I mean, the obvious is to recognize that while we all like to think that we can do it all and we strive to do as much as we can, we're not always experts in everything. Tonight's presentation, case in point, I know a lot about a lot of things, but I'm not an expert in all of them. I'm an expert in certain core areas, but I know who to refer you to or work with as part of my team and other teams to guide you or guide even myself in other directions. So that's what I would suggest you do as well, is do what you do best and reach out to other people who can help you do those parts that you cannot do yourself. Okay? So for the rest of the evening, I'll give you about 20 more minutes. This is kind of our who needs what, and then networking time. So, we have a small group here tonight, and there's some extenuating factors from some of our core team from being here tonight. But if there's anything that specific resource or need that you have, let me know. And if they're here tonight, we'll put you in touch. If we're not, I can tell you who they are and how to get in touch with them. Anyone have any specific need or question?
Talk with you like one-on-one, one-on-one time, talk about my product.
Yeah, so if you do want to talk with me about licensing, my information's on the website. Essentially what I do is I'll schedule a block of time with you. The first 30 minutes or so is just fine. We can just chat and get an idea for what it is you need from me and how I can help you. And then we can talk later about what the next steps are and how that works out. Okay? Generally, the other people in the group are essentially the same as well, operate the same. Anyone else have any specific need? Questions?
Yes, I'm actually looking for a CTO to join the team.
Oh.
It's some technological capabilities that I lack, me and my partner lack. And also, we're looking to file some IP professionals.
So David can help you in the IP capacity, David Waller. Again, his information's on the website. When you say CTO, what particular technology sector
Yes, wireless communications.
I think I have someone. I gotta see if he's still around. He may have moved recently.
Okay.
Do you know someone? You're with OC Inventors, aren't you? Yeah. Can you want to talk about your group?
Well, it's very, very similar. Also, I assume you're a nonprofit.
Correct.
Yeah. And so we have an audience with patent attorneys and engineers and inventors and marketing specialists. So it's very, very similar.
And you have some of those resources on your website as well?
I just gained control of the administrative access to the website. I'm beginning to revamp it.
And we're doing that too. So stay tuned. Ours is going to look a little bit different in the future as well.
Are we welcome to go up to OC?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
And Albert, is that the same group that you're in up there?
Yes.
Same group?
And
Okay.
how often do they meet? Once a month also?
Well, it's a little different format in that we meet twice a month, and we have a public meeting like this where the public are invited for $10 to get wealth of information, and then networking. That we have those, but then we also have our under non-disclosure agreement we have closed meetings where inventors can come in and present their ideas to the audience of inventors and patent attorneys and engineers. We give feedback, but it's done under non-disclosure agreement. So that's one thing that we do there, and you're absolutely all welcome. You're all welcome to it.
And what's the name of it?
Because like Alberto likes the benefits of both the groups, and I just met Alberto up there at one of our patent attorneys' presentations in a public meeting. But I guess Alberto, you go to the private meetings as well, the closed meetings.
I go to all meetings.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Whatever they.
He's all in.
You go for one of the trackers on town.
We have different locations for our public meetings and private meetings. Our private meetings are held in the Urban Workshop, which is a maker place. And I usually give a tour for the new members so they understand, hey, if you got to build a prototype, here you are. It's like $100 and something a month. Start making.
And that's the Orange County Inventors Club.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's another resource for you. If you like what you hear here, hop on the road and take a little road trip and go up there and see what they have to offer. The benefit is of all these inventors groups is collaboration, right? Helping each other out. And if you don't get what you need from us, we'll hopefully either bring it into the group or maybe we can send you up there to that group and maybe we can even learn some things from them as well. But yeah, so.
There's so many benefits. You guys being in San Diego and being familiar with your local resources, like you were saying, you teach the fourth graders, tune in to what's around you, because like Stephen Covey's book, The Speed of Trust, when you have businesses that have been there and you've seen them year after year, you know they're not fly-by-night.
Yeah.
And so you can more quickly trust them and believe what they're telling you. So there's a speed in getting your prototypes up and developed. And, just understanding there's a proprietary respect and privacy that can be shared. And, so personal relationships are more easily developed in person locally than on the internet.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing information about your group. Thank you too, Albert. Speaking of maker places, we do have a maker place here in San Diego. It is in the Moreno area. Have any of you familiar with that? Been there? It's really cool. I suggest they do offer tours there as well on a regular basis. I think they just had or will have their open house. I can't remember what day it was or is, but it's coming. It's either just passed or it's coming up quickly. But go to their website, it's Maker Place. It's a facility. There's a lot of wonderful tools. and resources there if you need to do some quick prototyping of your product idea. There's probably a resource there that can help you with that, using various mediums, whether it's 3D printing or woodworking or things like that. Danny back there in the back, our resident videographer and tech guy, he is with A Square Technologies. He is in Vista. If you're looking for a small parts contract manufacturer, that's the guy. His information's also on our website. Danny, you want to give a shout out to yourself?
Yeah, A Square Technologies in San Marcos.
In San Marcos, actually.
We're kind of
Yeah.
right across the street. Yeah, we manufacture a lot of small turnkey products for a lot of local companies, and we ship out and everything. But we've been in business since 1985. Doing prototype work, research and development projects. I've been in electronics for over 30 years myself, just prototype work, research and development. The semiconductor industry. I've recently been involved with A Square Technologies, but my background is about the same thing. When I ran a business in Dallas, we developed a lot of prototype work for Texas Instruments and Microsoft Corporation and a lot of these companies. So we're pretty familiar with new products, design and development.
Great. Thank you, Danny.
Yeah. And as far as videos, we're live right now on YouTube. All the past archived videos that were recorded here is on San Diego Inventors page on YouTube. All the newer ones are on San Diego Inventors Live. If you want to check those out, they're on YouTube.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else have any questions, comments? If not, I will, we're a little bit over on time tonight, and I apologize for that, but I'll still give you about 15 minutes or so to talk amongst yourselves, network, and then I'll throw you out so I can go home and rest this voice, whatever's left of it. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed tonight. See you next month.
Now, who are the professionals that you said are still in the house? Because I know you said two of them left. Did you have attorneys left?